The massive doors of the Grand Assembly Hall slid open with a soft hiss. Ambassador Sarah Chen walked through them with steady steps, her small team of human diplomats following behind her. The hall was enormous, big enough to hold a city block. Thousands of alien delegates filled the curved seats that rose up like a giant bowl around the central speaking platform. Sarah had been to many important meetings in her 30 years as a diplomat, but nothing compared to this. Today, humanity would finally ask for full membership in the Galactic Council. After 50 years of being treated like children who needed supervision, humans deserved a real voice in galaxy politics. The aliens watched her walk to the speaking platform. Most of them looked bored. Some whispered to each other in languages that sounded like wind chimes or grinding metal. Sarah could feel their eyes on her as she climbed the steps to the podium. The platform was designed for much taller beings, so she had to look up at most of the audience. At the highest seats sat the most powerful species in the galaxy. The Zephyrian hegemon lounged in his crystalline chair, his blue skin gleaming under the lights. His kind ruled over 200 star systems and considered themselves the most advanced race in the galaxy. Next to him, the representatives of the crystalline collective sat perfectly still, their bodies looking like living glass sculptures. They shared one mind across billions of individuals and made decisions through pure logic. Sarah pressed a button on the podium. Her voice echoed through the hall as the translation systems turned her words into thousands of different languages. Honored members of the Galactic Council, she began, I stand before you today representing the Human Federation and our 12 billion citizens across 47 worlds. We come seeking full membership in this great assembly. A few aliens shifted in their seats. Most looked like they wanted to be somewhere else. Sarah continued, reading from the prepared speech her team had worked on for months. In the past 50 years, humanity has proven itself worthy of your trust. We have followed all council laws. We have contributed to galactic peace. Our scientists have made important discoveries. Our soldiers have fought beside yours in 3 major conflicts. She paused and looked around the hall. We have shown that we can work with other species. We have learned from you. Now we ask that you recognize us as equals. The hegemon raised one long-fingered hand. Sarah stopped speaking. Ambassador Chen, the hegemon said, his voice smooth as silk. Your species has indeed participated in galactic affairs, but participation does not equal readiness for full membership. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the alien delegates. Sarah felt her heart sink but kept her face calm. Your military tactics, continued the hegemon, are primitive. You fight with violence and aggression instead of sophisticated strategy. Your technology works, yes, but it is crude compared to what true advanced species have created. Most concerning of all, your diplomacy is driven by emotion rather than logic. The crystalline collective's speaker stood up. When it talked, its voice sounded like singing glass. The collective agrees. Humans show promise, but you are still a young species. Your minds are chaotic. You make decisions based on feelings instead of facts. This creates unpredictable results. More aliens nodded. Sarah gripped the podium edge, her knuckles turning white. Furthermore, added a delegate from the Altarian Union, humans have shown troubling independence. You often ignore council suggestions. You make treaties with minor species without our approval. You explored dangerous regions of space despite our warnings. The hegemon stood up, his tall frame casting a shadow over the platform. The council recognizes humanity's potential. Therefore, we offer you a new arrangement. Permanent junior membership with restricted voting rights. All human colonies will have council oversight to ensure proper development. Human military actions must be approved by senior council members. In exchange, we will provide guidance to help your species mature. Sarah felt the blood drain from her face. This was not membership. It was slavery with fancy words. Additionally, the hegemon continued with what might have been a smile. The Zephyrian hegemon offers to take direct responsibility for human development. We have successfully guided 17 younger species to productive roles in galactic society. Humans would benefit greatly from our wisdom. Laughter echoed through the hall, not cruel laughter, but the kind adults made when children said something silly. Sarah heard one alien whisper to another, perhaps they can serve as translators for the other primitive species. Another voice said, their emotional nature might make them useful for entertainment purposes. Sarah stood at the podium, surrounded by the laughter and whispers of beings who saw humanity as nothing more than amusing pets. She thought of the human soldiers who had died fighting beside these same aliens. She thought of the human scientists who had shared their discoveries freely with the galaxy. She thought of the human diplomats who had prevented wars between species that now mocked them. Slowly, Sarah closed the folder containing her prepared speech. She picked up her small briefcase and walked around the podium to face the assembly directly. The Human Federation. Thanks the Galactic Council for this generous offer, she said, her voice carrying clearly through the silent hall. The laughter had stopped. Every alien was watching her now. However, Sarah continued, we must decline. Humanity seeks partnership, not patronage. We came here hoping to find equals, not masters. The hegemon leaned forward in his chair. Ambassador, surely you understand the wisdom of accepting guidance from your betters. Your species has much to learn. Sarah looked up at him, then at all the alien faces staring down at her. Perhaps we do have much to learn, but not from you. She turned and walked toward her team of human diplomats. They stood up as she approached, their faces showing the same quiet dignity she felt. Where are you going? Called the hegemon. These negotiations are not finished. Sarah stopped at the edge of the platform and turned back one final time. The entire hall was completely silent now. Thousands of aliens waited to hear what the human would say. Yes, they are, Sarah said simply. The Human Federation withdraws from these proceedings. We will not return. She walked down the platform steps, her team falling in behind her. Their footsteps echoed in the massive hall as they crossed the floor toward the exit. No one spoke. No one moved. At the great doors, Sarah paused and looked back one last time. The Galactic Council sat in stunned silence, as if they could not believe that the humans were actually leaving. The doors slid shut behind them with a soft hiss. In the hallway outside, Sarah's deputy ambassador, James Park, walked beside her. What happens now? He asked quietly. Sarah kept walking toward their shuttle. Now we go home, and we remember who our real friends are. Behind them, the sound of returning conversation leaked through the thick doors. Sarah could imagine the aliens inside, probably already dismissing the human walkout as a childish tantrum. They would return to their business, confident that the foolish humans would come crawling back within weeks. They were wrong. But they would not understand that for quite some time. As their shuttle lifted off from Kepler Prime Station, Sarah looked down at the massive structure growing smaller below them. Send a message to all human colonies and outposts, she told her communications officer. Begin Protocol 7. Yes, Ambassador. All of them? All of them, Sarah confirmed. It's time we reminded the galaxy what they're losing. 3 weeks after the humans walked out of the peace talks, Captain Elena Vasquez received her orders. She read them twice, then called her crew together on the bridge of the merchant vessel New Horizon. Change of plans, she announced to her mixed crew of humans and aliens. We're heading home instead of Zephyrian space. Korthak, her Altarian navigator, clicked his mandibles in confusion. But Captain, we have a delivery contract with the Zephyrian mining colonies. Very profitable, Elena shrugged. Contract expires next week anyway. We're not renewing. Not renewing? Korthak's four eyes widened. But we have traded with them for 6 years. They depend on our medical supplies. They'll find another supplier, Elena said calmly. Plot a course for Earth, we're going home. Similar conversations were happening on hundreds of human ships across the galaxy. Trade captains read their new orders with surprise, then began the long journey back to human space. Some alien crew members chose to stay aboard, while others found passage on council vessels. The humans were polite but firm. All commercial relationships with council species were ending. On the research station orbiting Kepler 442, Dr. Michael Santos was packing his laboratory equipment. His research partner, Dr. Vixthera of the Crystalline Collective, watched in crystalline confusion. This makes no logical sense, Vixthera said, her voice like wind chimes. Our research into quantum biology is 93% complete. The potential applications could benefit the entire galaxy. Michael carefully placed his microscopes in protective cases. I'm sure the Council's scientists can finish the work without us. But your insights into chaotic biological systems are essential. My people think in patterns. You think in possibilities. The collective needs your unpredictable perspective. Michael smiled sadly. You might want to mention that to your representatives on the Council. They seem to think our unpredictability was a problem. Vixthera's crystalline form flickered with what might have been distress. That was politics. This is science. Science should be above such concerns. Tell that to the hegemon, Michael said, sealing the last case. Maybe he'll listen to logic better than he listened to us. Dr. Santos activated his personal transport beacon. Within minutes, a human shuttle arrived to collect him and his equipment. As it pulled away from the station, he looked back at Vixthera standing alone in the laboratory they had shared for 3 years. He felt sorry for her, but orders were orders. On the frontier world of Zerion 4, Colonel Jack Harrison was supervising the evacuation of the human peacekeeping base. Local Altarian officials watched nervously as human soldiers loaded their equipment onto transport ships. Colonel Harrison, said Administrator Veltar, his insect-like features twitching with anxiety. Surely this withdrawal is temporary. The border conflicts with the Thanix clans have been increasing. Your troops are the only thing keeping them from raiding our settlements. Jack continued supervising the loading process. The council voted to reduce human involvement in galactic affairs. We're just following their wishes. But the Thanix don't respect Altarian military doctrine. They fight dirty like... Veltar stopped himself before finishing the sentence. Like humans? Jack asked with a slight smile. Yeah, we tend to think outside the box. Good luck with that. Veltar's mandibles clicked rapidly. I did not mean offense. Your methods are effective, just unconventional. The Thanix will not expect traditional Altarian tactics. No, they won't, Jack agreed. They'll expect human tactics, but we won't be here to use them. The last transport lifted off, leaving the Altarian administrator standing alone on the landing pad. Within hours, the first Thanix raids began. Back on Kepler Prime, Admiral Kelthus of the Zephyrian Navy was reviewing reports with growing confusion. His aide, Commander Thixis, stood at attention beside his desk. The humans have been remarkably compliant, Thixis reported. All military cooperation has ended exactly as scheduled. All trade agreements have been allowed to expire without renewal attempts. All joint research projects have been concluded ahead of schedule. Admiral Kelthus leaned back in his chair. This is what we wanted. The humans are finally accepting their place. Yes, sir. However, there have been some unexpected consequences. Such as? Thixis consulted his datapad. Several border conflicts that human forces were mediating have escalated. The Thanix clans have resumed raiding Altarian space. The Kelveran civil war has reignited. 3 trade disputes have turned into shooting wars. Kelthus waved a dismissive hand. Growing pains. These species must learn to solve their own problems instead of relying on human interference. Yes, sir. Also, there have been supply shortages in 17 sectors. It appears that human merchant vessels were carrying a significant portion of critical goods along certain trade routes. Other species will fill the gaps, Kelthus said confidently. The free market adapts, Thixis hesitated. There is one more thing, sir. Our intelligence networks in the Outer Rim have gone completely dark. Explain. All our monitoring stations beyond the Council's core territories have lost contact with their informants. Many of these were human traders and explorers who provided information in exchange for trade privileges. Kelthus frowned. And now they've gone home. Not exactly, sir. Long-range scans suggest that human ships are still active in those regions. They simply aren't talking to us anymore. Admiral Kelthus stood and walked to the large window overlooking the station's central hub. Below, alien vessels moved in their orderly patterns, loading and unloading cargo. Everything looked normal. Everything looked peaceful, sir. Thixis prompted. It's fine, Commander. Let the humans play in their corner of the galaxy. When they realize how much they need us, they'll come back asking for forgiveness. But even as he said it, Admiral Kelthus felt a strange unease. The galaxy was vast, and humanity had been active in many areas the Council considered unimportant. What were they doing out there now that they no longer reported to anyone? On the merchant vessel New Horizon, now 3 days out from Zephyrian space, Captain Vasquez was reviewing her new orders. The destination coordinates led to a region of space the Council had marked as economically worthless, a sector full of small, independent worlds that had never joined any major galactic organization. Korthak, she called to her navigator, plot these coordinates and tell me what's out there. The Altarian's eyes went wide as he studied the data. Captain, this region has 17 inhabited systems, all primitive by Council standards. No advanced technology, no major resources, no strategic value. Elena smiled. Perfect. Signal ahead and let them know we're coming. Tell them we have medical supplies, agricultural equipment, and defensive weapons for sale. Very reasonable prices. You wish to trade with primitives? I wish to trade with people who don't think they're better than us, Elena corrected. Send the message. As the New Horizon jumped to hyperspace, Korthik began to understand what was happening. The humans weren't going home to sulk. They were going to build something new. Something the Council didn't control. He wondered if his own people would be welcome in this new arrangement. After 3 more days of watching Captain Vasquez work, he decided to ask. The answer might surprise you, Elena said when he brought up the question. We judge people by their actions, not their species. You've been a good friend and a loyal crew member. That counts for a lot. Korthik's mandibles clicked, and what Elena had learned was his version of a smile. Perhaps the humans weren't the only ones who were tired of Council arrogance. Perhaps it was time for something new. 6 months after the humans left the peace talks, Admiral Kelthus stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching his fleet burn. The Korvaxi swarm had appeared without warning at the edge of Zephyrian space. Intelligence reports had said they were just raiders, primitive nomads who attacked isolated outposts and ran when real military forces arrived. The reports were wrong. Sir, the harmony of logic is not responding, reported his communications officer. Last transmission showed Korvaxi borders on all decks. Kelthus watched another ship explode on his tactical display. The crystalline collective vessel had been the most advanced ship in his fleet, equipped with shields that could stop any known weapon. The Korvaxi had somehow found a way through them. How many ships have we lost? He asked quietly. 17 confirmed destroyed, 12 more badly damaged. The enemy has lost only 3 vessels. Kelthus closed his eyes. This was impossible. His fleet followed the finest military doctrine in the galaxy. Every ship captain had studied at the prestigious Zephyrian War College. They used tactics that had won battles for thousands of years. The Korvaxi fought like animals. They ignored formation flying. They attacked in small groups from random directions. When his ships moved to intercept them, they vanished into hyperspace only to appear somewhere else entirely. They targeted supply ships instead of warships. They used ramming attacks like barbarians. It should not have worked, but it was working. Admiral, called his tactical officer. The Korvaxi are pulling back. All enemy ships are jumping to hyperspace. Kelthus opened his eyes and looked at the tactical display. Where once he had commanded a proud fleet of 60 ships, only 37 remained operational. The Korvaxi had vanished as suddenly as they appeared, leaving behind only wreckage and confusion. Sir, incoming message from High Command, the communications officer announced. The holographic image of Supreme Admiral Vorthak appeared on the bridge. His blue skin had turned pale with anger. Admiral Kelthus explained to me how the most advanced fleet in this sector was defeated by primitive raiders. Kelthus straightened his uniform. Sir, the enemy used tactics we have never encountered. They refused to engage in proper formation combat. Their hit-and-run attacks targeted our supply lines and support vessels. Our defensive protocols were designed for civilized warfare. Civilized warfare? Vorthak's voice rose. They are raiders, Admiral. Crude barbarians with stolen ships. How difficult can they be to defeat? Before Kelthus could answer, his intelligence officer looked up from her console. Sir, I'm reading reports from the Archives Division. They've been researching past conflicts with the Korvaxi, and the last 3 times the Korvaxi attacked Council space, they were defeated. But in each case, the winning strategies were developed by human military advisors. The bridge went silent. Kelthus felt a cold knot forming in his stomach. Show me those records. The tactical display changed to show historical battle maps. In every case, the pattern was the same. Traditional Council forces would engage the Korvaxi and suffer heavy losses. Then human ships would arrive with tactics that made no sense to proper military minds. The humans would split their forces, attack from multiple directions, and use deception instead of direct assault. They fought chaos with chaos. The humans understood their psychology, the intelligence officer continued. Korvaxi respect strength and unpredictability. Traditional defensive formations looked like fear to them, which encouraged more attacks. But human tactics confused them. The Korvaxi couldn't predict what humans would do next, so they became cautious. Supreme Admiral Vorthak's image flickered with static as his anger grew. Are you telling me that we need primitive human tactics to defeat these raiders? Sir, Kelthus said carefully, perhaps we should consider contacting the Human Federation for assistance. Absolutely not. Vorthak slammed his fist on something off-screen. The Zephyrian Navy does not beg for help from rejected species. We will adapt our tactics and destroy these Korvaxi ourselves. The communication ended. Admiral Kelthus stood alone on his bridge, surrounded by officers who tried not to meet his eyes. They all knew the truth that no one wanted to say out loud. Without the humans, the Council's military was not as strong as they had believed. 3 days later, the Korvaxi struck again. This time, they hit the Altarian colony world of Nexus 7. The planet's defense force followed standard doctrine, establishing a defensive perimeter around the main city and waiting for the raiders to attack their strongest position. The Korvaxi ignored the city entirely. They landed at 17 different points across the planet and began raiding agricultural centers and mining facilities. When Altarian forces moved to intercept them, the raiders had already loaded their ships and vanished. The planet's governor, Yaxtel, sent desperate messages to every Council military base in the sector. They took everything, he reported. Food stores, mining equipment, even our weather satellites. And we never even saw most of them. Similar reports came in from across the frontier. The Korvaxi were not just raiding anymore. They were stripping entire systems of anything useful. More disturbing still, they seemed to know exactly where to strike for maximum effect, while avoiding strong defenses. On Kepler Prime, the emergency session of the Galactic Council was not going well. Representatives from dozens of species shouted at each other in the Great Assembly Hall, while translators struggled to keep up. The Zephyrian Navy has failed us, declared Ambassador Trillax of the Altarian Union. 3 more systems have been raided while your fleets chase shadows. Our tactics are sound, insisted Admiral Kelthus, who had been called to explain his failures. The enemy simply refuses to fight honorably. The Crystalline Collective's speaker stood up. The collective has analyzed all available data. There is a 97% probability that current Council military doctrine will prove ineffective against Korvaxi tactics. Then what do you suggest? Demanded the hegemon, the crystalline being paused for exactly 3 seconds before responding. Historical data suggests that human military advisors would be optimal for this situation. The hall erupted in angry voices. Several delegates stood up shouting at once. The hegemon raised his hand for silence. The Council will not crawl to the humans begging for help, he announced. We are the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. We will find a solution. But privately, many delegates were beginning to wonder if their pride was worth the cost. The Korvaxi were growing bolder with each attack. Intelligence reports suggested they were massing for something much larger than simple raids. In his private chambers, Admiral Kelthus studied star charts showing human space. All the sectors beyond Council territory were marked in red, areas where they had no intelligence, no contacts, and no idea what was happening. Before the withdrawal, human traders and explorers had provided regular reports from these regions. They had served as early warning systems for threats like the Korvaxi. Now the Council was flying blind, reacting to attacks instead of preventing them. Kelthus activated his personal communicator and sent a coded message to his most trusted intelligence operative. Find a way to contact the humans, he ordered. I need to know what they're doing out there. 3 days later, he received a reply that made his blood run cold. Sir, the humans are not hiding in their original territory. Long-range scans show massive expansion into sectors we considered worthless. They've established colonies, trade networks, and defense agreements with species we've never heard of. Estimated human space has tripled in size. Kelthus sat down heavily in his chair. While the Council had been congratulating itself on getting rid of the troublesome humans, humanity had been building something new. Something the Council knew nothing about. And somewhere in that unknown territory, they might be laughing at the news of Korvaxi attacks on their former allies. For the first time since the peace talks, Admiral Kelthus wondered if the humans had ever really needed the Council at all. The message drone arrived at Earth exactly 1 year after Ambassador Chen had walked out of the peace talks. It carried the official seal of the Galactic Council and a priority diplomatic code that had not been used in over a century. President Maria Santos read the message 3 times before calling an emergency meeting of the Human Federation Council. The alien words, translated into simple English, were both formal and desperate. The Galactic Council requests immediate diplomatic contact with the Human Federation regarding matters of mutual galactic security. The Korvaxi threat has expanded beyond acceptable parameters. We seek consultation on tactical solutions. Defense Secretary Admiral Torres laughed bitterly. Consultation? A year ago they wanted to make us their pets. Now they want consultation. What's the real situation out there? President Santos asked Director Kim of Federation Intelligence. Kim activated a holographic display showing the galaxy. Large red areas marked Corvaxi-controlled space. They've taken 17 Council systems in the past 4 months. The Council's military losses are approaching 30% of their total fleet strength. And they want our help. They need our help, Kim corrected. Our agents report that Council morale is collapsing. 3 member species have already begun withdrawing their fleets to defend their home systems. The United Front is breaking apart. President Santos studied the display. What are our casualties? 0, Admiral Torres said with satisfaction. The Corvaxi haven't touched human space. In fact, our intelligence suggests they're actively avoiding us. Why? Because they remember the last time they fought humans, Torres explained. 40 years ago, we stopped their advance at the Battle of Kepler's Edge. Captain Harrison used a combination of psychological warfare and unpredictable tactics that confused them completely. They lost half their fleet and retreated to the outer rim. Foreign Secretary Chen, Ambassador Sarah's sister, leaned forward. So what do we tell the Council? President Santos was quiet for a long moment. Nothing, she finally said. Let them sweat a little longer. Ma'am? Secretary Chen looked surprised. They spent 50 years treating us like children who needed supervision. They had their chance to treat us as equals. Now they can experience what it's like to handle galactic problems without us. But the Council was not giving up easily. When the first diplomatic message went unanswered, they tried different approaches. Trade offers arrived promising exclusive deals and preferential trading status. Scientific cooperation proposals offered full access to Council research databases. Military assistance packages promised advanced weapons technology. All were ignored. Desperate Council agents tried to contact human colonies directly, bypassing the Federation government. They found that most human outposts had been abandoned or moved. The few they could locate refused all communication, following orders from Earth to maintain radio silence with Council species. Admiral Kelthus personally led a reconnaissance mission to the edge of known human space. What he found there shocked him completely. Sir, his navigation officer reported, these star charts are completely wrong. Long-range scans show human settlements in systems that our surveys marked as uninhabitable. Kelthus stared at the sensor readings. How many settlements? At least 40 in this sector alone. And sir, they're not alone. I'm detecting alien ships of unknown design. Multiple species all working together. Working together how? Trade convoys, joint defense patrols, shared construction projects. It looks like the humans have built some kind of alliance. Kelthus ordered his ship closer, hoping to gather more intelligence. What he saw made him question everything he thought he knew about galactic politics. Human vessels worked alongside ships from species the Council had never contacted. Some of these aliens came from worlds the Council had dismissed as primitive or underdeveloped. Others were from regions so far from Council space that no one had bothered to explore them. But these species were not primitive anymore. Their ships used human-designed weapons and human-developed shield technology. More importantly, they fought in coordinated formations that looked nothing like traditional Council tactics. Sir, we're being scanned, the sensor officer announced. Multiple ships are moving to intercept us. Kelthus considered his options. His single ship was no match for the force approaching them. Signal our intentions. Tell them we come in peace and request permission to speak with human authorities. The response came back in perfect Zephyrian. Permission denied. Leave this space immediately or you will be escorted out. Escorted out by whom? Kelthus demanded. His answer came when 3 ships dropped out of hyperspace around them. One was clearly human design, but the other 2 were completely unknown. All 3 had their weapons powered and ready. This is Captain Martinez of the Federation vessel Independence, came a human voice over the communication system. Admiral Kelthus, you are in violation of the Rimward Defense Treaty. You have 30 seconds to begin jumping out of this system. Captain Martinez, I request permission to speak with your superiors about the Corvaxi threat. The Corvaxi are a Council problem, Admiral. You chose to handle galactic security without human involvement. We're respecting that decision. But surely you understand that if the Council falls, the entire galaxy will be in chaos. There was a pause before Martinez responded. Admiral, the galaxy is bigger than the Council. There are thousands of species out here that never needed your permission to exist. The chaos you're worried about? We're preventing it just fine without you. Kelthus felt a chill run down his spine. Captain, are you saying that humanity is building its own galactic government? I'm saying humanity is working with our friends and allies, something the Council should have tried before it was too late. The transmission ended. Kelthus had no choice but to order his ship to jump away. As they entered hyperspace, he realized the full scope of what had happened. Humanity had not retreated after the failed peace talks. They had expanded. While the Council was congratulating itself on maintaining galactic order, the humans had been building a completely different kind of order. One based on cooperation instead of hierarchy, one that included species the Council had ignored. And now that new order was strong enough to tell the Council's most powerful admiral to go away. On Earth, President Santos received Admiral Kelthus's report from their own intelligence sources. Director Kim summarized the encounter in her morning briefing. Kelthus looked completely defeated when he left our space. Kim reported, "Our allies handled the situation perfectly. No violence, but very clear that the Council is not welcome." "How are our new partnerships developing?" Santos asked. "Better than expected," Admiral Torres answered. "The Javari Confederacy has agreed to joint defense operations. The Nexus Collective is sharing their biotechnology. Even the Wanderer fleets have signed trade agreements. These species trust us because we treat them as equals. And the Korvaxi, still avoiding human space entirely. Our psychological warfare experts think they remember our tactics from previous conflicts. They're not interested in fighting an enemy they can't predict." President Santos smiled grimly. "So we have peace while the Council faces war." "Yes, ma'am. But there's more. Intelligence reports suggest the Korvaxi are preparing for something big. A massive assault on the Council's core systems." Santos considered this news. How massive? Possibly large enough to threaten Kepler Prime itself. The room went quiet. Kepler Prime was the heart of Council space where the peace talks had been held a year ago. If it fell, the Council government would collapse completely. "Ma'am," Secretary Chen said quietly, "if the Council falls, millions of innocent civilians will die. Whatever we think of their government, the people don't deserve that." President Santos nodded slowly. "You're right. But we won't beg them to let us help. When they're ready to ask properly, we'll be ready to answer." "And if they don't ask?" Santos looked out the window at the ships in Earth's orbital shipyards. Human vessels worked alongside alien craft from their new allies, building a fleet unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. "Then they'll learn what it really means to stand alone," she said. The attack on Kepler Prime began at dawn, station time. Admiral Kelthus watched in horror as the largest Korvaxi fleet in recorded history dropped out of hyperspace around the Council's most important station. Thousands of ships appeared in seconds, their crude designs somehow more frightening than the most advanced warships. "Sir, enemy fleet composition includes over 3,000 vessels," his tactical officer reported, her voice shaking. "This is 10 times larger than any previous Korvaxi." "Attack," Kelthus commanded the defense fleet from his flagship in orbit around Kepler Prime. He had 60 ships, under his command, the best the Council could gather after months of devastating losses. Against 3,000 enemies, they might as well have been armed with toys. "All ships form defensive pattern Delta 7 around the station," he ordered. "Activate all defensive systems. Send emergency signals to every Council fleet in range." But even as he gave the orders, Kelthus knew they were doomed. The nearest Council reinforcements were 6 hours away. The station's shields might hold for 1 hour, maybe 2. After that, the center of galactic government would fall to primitive raiders. The Korvaxi attacked in their usual chaotic style, but this time, their numbers made chaos into overwhelming force. They came from every direction at once, ignoring the defensive formations that had protected civilized space for thousands of years. Council ships tried to maintain proper battle lines while the enemy swarmed around them like angry insects. Within minutes, Kelthus lost contact with 12 ships. The Korvaxi used ramming attacks, suicide runs, and boarding parties with equal brutality. They fought like they had nothing to lose and everything to gain. "Sir, station shields are down to 60%, came the report from Kepler Prime's command center. "Hull breaches on levels 7 through 15. We're beginning emergency evacuation procedures." Kelthus closed his eyes. In a few hours, the station where humanity had been humiliated would become the site of the Council's final defeat. The irony was bitter. "Admiral," his sensor officer suddenly shouted. New contacts dropping out of hyperspace at the system edge. Kelthus opened his eyes and looked at the tactical display. At first he thought reinforcements had arrived early, but these ships moved in formations he had never seen before. They approached in loose groups that split and reformed like living things. Their energy signatures were strange. Human, but modified with technology from unknown sources. "Sir, incoming transmission on an open channel." The main screen flickered to life, showing the bridge of an unknown vessel. A human in Admiral's uniform stood in the center, his face calm despite the chaos around them. "This is Admiral Marcus Torres of the Human Federation Navy," the man said. "Kepler Prime, you are secure. We have some things to discuss." Before Kelthus could respond, the human fleet engaged the Korvaxi with tactics that defied every military principle he had ever learned. Human ships scattered in all directions, then suddenly converged on specific targets before vanishing again. They used false retreats to draw enemy ships into ambushes. Some human vessels deliberately appeared damaged to lure Korvaxi into traps. Most shocking of all, the humans were not fighting alone. Ships of unknown design fought alongside them, using human tactics but alien technology. The combined fleet moved like a single organism, each part supporting the others in ways that made no logical sense but worked perfectly. The Korvaxi, who had terrified Council forces with their unpredictability, found themselves out-chaosed by an enemy they could not understand. Human psychological warfare broadcasts filled their communication channels with confusing messages. Fake surrender signals mixed with ancient human music and random poetry readings. Within 2 hours, the massive Korvaxi fleet was either destroyed or fleeing in panic. The ships that escaped did so because the humans let them go, broadcasting warnings that any return to Council space would result in permanent educational experiences. As the last Korvaxi vessel jumped to hyperspace, Admiral Torres opened a communication channel to Kepler Prime. "Admiral Kelthus," Torres said, "I believe you have something to discuss with us." An hour later, Kelthus found himself in the same conference room where Ambassador Chen had been humiliated 18 months earlier. This time the humans sat at the head of the table while Council representatives took the junior seats. Admiral Torres was not alone. He had brought representatives from a dozen alien species that Kelthus had never seen before. Some looked primitive by Council standards, but their technology and tactics had just saved the most advanced civilization in the galaxy. "Admiral Torres," Kelthus began carefully, "the Council owes humanity a debt of gratitude." "No," Torres replied simply. "The Council owes humanity an apology." The words hung in the air like a physical blow. Around the table, Council representatives shifted uncomfortably in their chairs. "We came here in good faith 18 months ago," Torres continued. "We offered partnership and were given insults. We offered our knowledge and were told we were too primitive to matter. We offered our friendship and were told we needed masters." Kelthus felt his face burning with shame. "Admiral, perhaps there were misunderstandings." "No misunderstandings," Torres said firmly. "Just arrogance. The Council decided that military strength and advanced technology made you superior to everyone else. You forgot that diversity of thought is more valuable than uniformity of doctrine." "But you came to help us," protested the Crystalline Collective's representative. "Surely this proves that we can work together." Torres smiled grimly. "We didn't come to help the Council. We came to protect innocent civilians. There's a difference." "I don't understand." "The Council represents governments and militaries. The people living on Kepler Prime are just people trying to live their lives. They don't deserve to die because their leaders are too proud to admit mistakes." Admiral Kelthus took a deep breath. "What do you want from us?" "Recognition," Torres said simply. "Recognition that the galaxy is big enough for different ways of thinking. Recognition that primitive species might have valuable ideas. Recognition that cooperation works better than control. And if we provide this recognition," Torres gestured to his alien allies, "then you can join the real galactic community. Not the one where a few advanced species tell everyone else what to do, but the one where all species work together as equals." The hegemon's representative, who had remained silent until now, finally spoke. "You want us to abandon thousands of years of civilized order for chaos?" "We want you to abandon thousands of years of civilized arrogance for wisdom," Torres corrected. "The Korvaxi just proved that your order doesn't work against enemies who refuse to follow your rules. Our chaos defeated them in hours. How do we know this alliance of yours will accept us? Asked the Altarian delegate. Torres looked around the table. That depends. Are you ready to treat other species as equals? Are you willing to learn from people you previously called primitive? Can you accept that being technologically advanced doesn't make you morally superior? The council representatives looked at each other. Some seemed thoughtful, others appeared angry. The debate would continue for hours, Kelthus realized. Years of pride would not disappear overnight. But outside the conference room windows, human ships patrolled alongside vessels from species the council had never bothered to contact. The future was already being built without the council's permission. Admiral Torres stood up. Take your time deciding, he said. But understand this. The galaxy moved on without you once before. It can do so again. As the human delegation prepared to leave, Kelthus called out, Admiral, what happens if we choose not to join your alliance? Torres paused at the door. Then you'll continue doing things the same way you always have. And the next time you face a threat you can't understand, you'll face it alone. The door closed behind the humans, leaving the council representatives to contemplate a galaxy where they were no longer the most important voices in the room. For the first time in thousands of years, the council would have to learn what it meant to ask for help instead of demanding obedience. The lesson would be harder than any of them imagined, but it was long overdue. Outside, Admiral Torres looked up at the stars visible through Kepler Prime's massive windows. Somewhere out there, thousands of species were building something new together. Whether the council joined them or not, the future would be built on cooperation, not conquest. Humanity had taught the galaxy an important lesson. Sometimes the best way to lead is to walk away and let others choose to follow.